Okay, so the next thing we're going to take a look at is going to be enumerated data types, or just enums for short. So an enumerated data type is going to consist of a set of predefined values. These will be known as the enum constants. In order to declare an enumerated data type, you're going to use the following syntax. So we can see right here, we've got our class header and body for some public class called dayTester. Inside of the curly braces, getting into the actual body of this, we see that in the global scope of this class, so just before we get into the main method, this is going to be where we place our enum constant. So it's not terribly uncommon to see this done where your enum constant is going to be placed in this global scope like this. So we're going to say that we have our enum, we're going to call it day, and then we're going to set it to essentially the 7 days of the week. So you'll notice that we've used the keyword enum to indicate that this is an enum that we intend to create or define right here. We then give it a name. You'll notice that for the naming of it, we go ahead and use Pascal case. The D in day is capitalized. So that indicates that in some ways you might say that this has some kind of relationship to classes. At least it's certainly hinting at that. We then have a pair of curly braces, so it essentially has the equivalent of a header and a body. And then inside of those curly braces, we're going to see our different constants. In this case, we have 7 of those. Keep in mind that because we're dealing with constants, that we're going to follow the same general convention for naming those constants, where we're going to put the name in all capital letters like this. And of course, if we were dealing with a name that has multiple words, then we would go ahead and separate those with an underscore. For most of the examples that I do, I'm only going to be focusing on things like days of the week, for example, so we're not really going to see any instances of that, but do keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and at least start getting this a little bit put together. So we'll go ahead and minimize this and come over to NetBeans. So we'll go ahead and create a new project, be a new Java application. So for this one, we were going to go ahead and call it the day tester. So let's go ahead and use that name for it. So we'll go ahead and create the day tester, click finish. Let's go ahead and remove the extra comments. And make a few adjustments to the syntax or the style of this. We'll go ahead and leave the to-do stub in the main method for now. We'll come back to that. For the time being, we're going to go ahead and focus on putting together that enum. So we're going to use the enum keyword. We'll then go ahead and give it a name. In this case, we're calling it day. We then have our pair of curly braces. And inside of those curly braces is where we're going to go ahead and put in our different constants. So in this case, we'll say something like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay. Another thing to keep in mind is that even though we're going to put this together in a way that kind of looks like an array construction or declaration, we do not actually have a semicolon on the end, and also there's not going to be like an equal sign somewhere in here. We're just going to go ahead and essentially create it as if it were sort of like a class, where we're saying, replace class with enum. We still give it a name. We then have a pair of curly braces, not terribly different from the body of a class. And then inside, just go ahead and give it the constants. And to add on to this analogy to a class, you'll notice that the different constants, if you put them into an IDE like, say, this NetBeans text editor, that they are color-coded in the same way that fields are color-coded for a class. Okay, so now that we've got that, if we want to go ahead and actually declare a variable making use out of that enum type, and then go ahead and assign one of those enum constants to that variable, we want to go ahead and use the following syntax. So the data type of our variable will match the name of that enum. So in this case, we're going to be working with the day enum. We can go ahead and give it a name. In this case, we could call it something like workday. We'll still use typical assignment in this case. We still have the assignment operator. And then when we want to go ahead and assign one of these constants to it, we want to make sure that we understand that that constant is coming from the day enum. So we're going to go ahead and specify that essentially as its scope of that constant. So we're going to say day.Wednesday. In this case, that day.Wednesday that we see right there is going to be the fully qualified name of the Wednesday constant of the day type. Okay, so let's go ahead and put that together. So right here, we'll go ahead and put this in. So we're going to say day workday is equal to day.Wednesday. So go ahead and grab that and save that. Okay, so now that we have that put together, let's see if we can actually do something kind of useful with it. Before we get into that, I should probably go ahead and finally address the thing that I keep hinting at, which is this idea that enumerated data types are kind of like classes. They have a similar syntax. They use pretty much the same color coding to represent the fields of a class. So the general idea here is that enumerated types are going to be specialized classes, and that those enum constants, they're not actually fields, they're actually objects of that class. So this means that the enum constants will have methods similar to objects of any other class. This includes things like a custom toString method. We'll also see that they have an ordinal method, see what that does. They also have their own equals method and a compare to method. So to take a look at what we just wrote, so we put together a variable called workday. We said that it was equal to day.Wednesday. So what that means is that now workday is actually a reference variable that holds a reference to the Wednesday object, or that enum constant within our enumerated day type. So if we go ahead and take a look at everything that's on the right-hand side, we see the list of different constants, and it's just going to mention that each of these different constants is going to be an object of our type day, which is a specialized class. So now that we've seen this, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these different methods we can use. So to start off with, we'll just go ahead and look at the toString method. So the toString method of enum constants will return the name of the constant as a string. If we try to access workday later in our program, such as in a print statement, then Wednesday is going to be the value used. So if we go ahead and do something like, say, just system.out.println workday, the output is going to be Wednesday. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So immediately after we declared and sort of constructed, but not exactly, this this workday, we can go ahead and just print that out right here. So we'll go ahead and run this, and we'll see that Wednesday prints to the console. One thing to keep in mind is that because of the fact that we use this convention of all capital letters with the name of a constant, that will carry over into the print statements. So anytime you print this out to the console like this, it is going to be in all capital letters here as well. And also anytime that you want to try to use it, say like in a string comparison, you must make sure that when you do those comparisons that you understand that it's going to be in all capital letters. So if you were to try to compare this to Wednesday as most people would normally spell it, where they just capitalize the W and then the rest is lowercase, keep in mind that that would not be equivalent to the constant, which is in all capital letters. Okay, the next thing we'll take a look at is going to be that ordinal method. So this is going to return the position of an enum constant within the enum declaration. So that basically just means where is it in that that array-like structure that we started off by creating. So similar to arrays, enum positions are going to be zero-based. So if we go ahead and take a look at the position, the ordinal of Wednesday, we would expect it to have a value of 3. So if we check real quick to see why that is. So Sunday starts at position 0, Monday is going to be at position 1, Tuesday is at position 2, Wednesday is at position 3, so that's what we're expecting for that. Thursday is going to be at position 4, and then Friday is going to be at position 5, and I should probably also go ahead and add Saturday right about now. So we actually have a full week. And Saturday will be at position 6. So then if we want to go ahead and take a look at that, let's go ahead and include another print statement right here. And let's say that we want to go ahead and take workday, and we want to get the ordinal of it now. So we'll go ahead and save that. And so now if we run this, we'll get our Wednesday from the first print statement, and we'll see that value 3 for the second print statement. Additionally, we also have an equals and a compare to method. So these are not terribly different from the equals and compare to methods of, let's say, the string class, for example. So the equals method is going to accept an object and then return true if that object is equal to the calling enum constant. Essentially what that means is that we're going to provide it with two things. So we've got the calling enum constant, in this case workday, and then we've got the other object that we're going to pass into the equals method. So in this case, that's going to be day.Wednesday. And then we're just going to check to see if those two things are equivalent to each other. With the compare to method, this is going to be used to compare two enum constants of the same type. This method is meant to describe the position of the constants relative to each other. So essentially the way this works is we're going to, again, give it a calling object. So in this case, workday. And then we have another one that we pass into the compare to method. So in this case, that would be day.Thursday. So the way that we want to think about this is that we want to take those ordinals, the positions of each of those two constants, and we want to compare those to each other by just taking the difference. So if workday holds day.Wednesday, which has a value of 3, and day.Thursday, that would be the next value over, which holds a position of 4. So we'd go ahead and say something like 3 minus 4. That's going to give you -1. So let's take a look at both of these. So we'll go ahead and minimize this. We'll come over here. And let's go ahead and create 2 more print statements. So this next one, we'll go ahead and print to the console. Let's take workday dot equals, and then we'll go ahead and put in day dot, and then just go ahead and get the W, and then let that finish. So we'll go ahead and save that. We'll go ahead and run this really quick. So if we run this right now, we can see true for this final print statement right here. If I were to change this to some other value, let's say Friday, for example, we save that and we run it, then it would go ahead and give us false. And then if we take a look at that compare to method, so we'll say workday.compare to, and for this one, we can go ahead and just give it, let's say we do Thursday, like the example that we just saw. So we'll go ahead and grab that one, save that, and we'll run it. And so for this one, we're going to go ahead and get -1 because we're doing 3 minus 4. If we wanted to, we could go ahead and extend this even further. Maybe we could also just do it from the one of the ones at the beginning. So maybe if we do this with Sunday. So in this case, we're going to take Wednesday, which has the value 3, and then Sunday, which has the value 0. Again, keeping in mind that these are 0-based. So we're going to do 3 minus 0, which would give us 3. So if you run that, you can see that value print out right there. So one of the useful things about this, similar to using the compare to method with strings, is that you can actually check to see whether or not this value is either positive or negative, and that tells you something about whether or not a particular constant comes before another. So if the order of these constants actually matters, say like in this case where we're dealing with days of the week where there is some importance to the order of these, you can actually go ahead and take a look at what that order happens to be by using this compare to method. So you can check to see if maybe one day comes before another in the week, or if another day comes after that day in the week, based on whether or not the compare to method gives you either a positive or negative value. So in this case, a positive value tells me that Sunday comes before Wednesday, whereas the negative value that I got when I did it with Thursday tells me that Thursday comes after Wednesday. And then finally, to kind of wrap up on enumerated data types, you can take another look at the switch statement, so a little bit of conditional code. So recall that cases for a switch must either be literals or constants. So because of the fact that enumerated data types are considered named constants, that means that we can actually use those with switch statements. So we can actually add that onto the list of different data types that we can use with our switches. Also note that the fully qualified name is not going to be required for the cases. In this particular case, when we're dealing with switches, whenever we give it a variable of some kind, or maybe another constant as the switch statement. So say like day of week right here. Based on that, it's going to infer the expected type for all of the different cases. So in this case, when we're dealing with them, we're just going to say things like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So we don't really have to worry too much about each one of those being fully qualified. So we don't have to say like date at Sunday, date at Monday. So then we can go ahead and come over to NetBeans and go ahead and put this together. So let's go ahead and come down just after these print statements right here. We'll go ahead and put together the variable that we just saw as well as the switch statement. So we'll go ahead and include a declaration for day of week. And then we'll go ahead and assign to this one of these days. So one of the constants from our day enum. Let's say for this one we go ahead and do Friday. And then we'll go ahead and build the switch for this as well. So we're going to go ahead and do switch and do day of week. And then right here, we'll go ahead and include the different cases for our day of week. So we'll do case Sunday. And let's say that for each one of these different cases, we'll go ahead and put in a print statement just stating today is, and then whichever day of the week we happen to choose. So we'll go ahead and do something like system.out.println. We'll say today is Sunday, and then we'll have our break. So of course, to keep in mind with our different cases, as I mentioned, we're not going to have the fully qualified name. We're going to drop off the day dot portion at the beginning. We just keep the name of the constant itself. And of course, because we're dealing with constants, we still have to make sure that the convention that we're using of all capital letters is consistent every time we use it. So again, it's got to match up with exactly what we set it to back when we declared the enum right here. So go ahead and make sure that we do exactly that. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is just grab this case that we have right here, just copy this down, since I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing for each one of the other 6 days of the week. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, and then for each one of these other ones, it'll give me an error right now because I'm trying to use a duplicate case. So I'll just go ahead and replace this with the appropriate day of the week. So we'll change the next one to Monday. The one after that will be changed to Tuesday. Then do Wednesday. Do Thursday. Do Friday. And then finally we'll go ahead and do Saturday and make sure we don't forget it this time. Okay. In addition to all of this, we'll go ahead and include a default case as well. So just a default. And let's say if we hit this default case, we'll just do something like invalid day of week. And save that. And so now if we run this, what it'll do is just pick out the appropriate print statement based on the case that our day of week variable matches up with. In this case, it's going to match up with Friday since that's what we set it to. And it'll say today is Friday. So if we run this, you can see that print out right there with today is Friday. So the way that I put this together is reasonable, but not really the intended purpose of conditional coding, say like the switch statement that we have right here. Generally, the reason that we have something like this in our programs is because of the fact that we're going to let the user make some kind of choice or decision, and then based on that decision that they make, the program will respond accordingly. So ideally, we don't really want to just decide the value the day of week is going to hold. Instead, we would like the user to be able to make a decision about what value to put into day of week. So what we can go ahead and do is actually modify this a little bit to give the user that kind of flexibility or that choice. One of the easiest ways we could do that is to just go ahead and use the scanner class. So we can go ahead and just let them provide their own input. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'll go ahead and do the rest of the code right here. We'll go ahead and create a scanner object, and then we'll go ahead and use the print statement to print out a request, and then just grab the user's input using the appropriate method of the scanner class. So we'll just do all of that right here. So we'll go ahead and create a scanner. We'll call it keyboard since we're going to be reading from keyboard input. Say this is equal to a new scanner object that is being used specifically to scan or read from the standard input stream, system.in. It'll give us a little error right now. Make sure that we go ahead and import the scanner class. So we'll go ahead and include that as well. So that's going to be this additional import statement that I'm just going to go ahead and let NetBeans take care of for me. Once we have that, then we'll go ahead and include our print statement. So we'll say system.out.print. Say please enter a day of the week. And then underneath it, we need to go ahead and modify this one. So the way that we need to go about modifying this is we need to replace this part right here with the user's input. So that string that they give us, that needs to correspond to a particular day of the week. So there's a method that we can actually use with our enums that will essentially take whatever string that we provide and convert that into the appropriate object right here. So that's going to be the value of method. And then inside of here, we need to go ahead and put in our input that we get from the user. We're going to say keyboard.nextLine, like so. And so at this point, this is not going to give us any kind of error. So this is exactly the way that this method is intended to be used. And the value that I'm passing in, this will be treated as a string. So the data type of that value is compatible with what it's expecting. So if I were to go ahead and run this program, so right now we get our extra couple of print statements. So we can just kind of ignore all of that. The thing that we're focused on now is going to be this request to enter a day of the week. So typically, the way that you would enter a day of the week, you'd probably do something like, let's say we want to put in Sunday. So you'd put like a capital S, and then the rest of the letters would be lowercase. This is pretty much the standard way that you see people write a day of the week. The problem with this is that it doesn't match with what it was looking for. So we need to go ahead and correct this right here. There's no value here that matches this exact version of writing out the word Sunday. Sunday in here is in all capital letters. So we need to go ahead and add some additional code to make sure that our program understands exactly what it is that we're trying to specify. So I'm just going to go ahead and take whatever input that the user gives me from next line. We're going to take that string, and we're just going to go ahead and add on another method to this. So in this case, we're going to use two uppercase, so this one right here, to just go ahead and just capitalize all the letters in the word that they enter. We'll go ahead and save that. And so now, if we go ahead and do this again, run this. So now if we enter it the way that we just did, because we included this two uppercase, the program will go ahead and take care of changing that word so that it matches this name that we have right here. And so now if I push enter, it'll go ahead and just move on to the switch statement and correctly print out today is Sunday. Okay, so at this point, this is going to wrap up everything for the enumerated data type. So we took a look at how to declare one, how to actually use it with our variables, a couple of the different methods that come with it, and then also how to use it in switches. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and wrap up on Chapter 8 by taking a look at the concept of garbage collection and how that is handled in Java.